Ahoy, Nakama, and welcome aboard, or walk the plank. We're your co-captains, Adam and Ed, and this is the Void CenturyPodcast. Your weekly deep dive into One Piece lore, lost treasures, and the wildest fan theories from the Grand Line to the Void Century. From ancient secrets to Yonko chaos and fresh chapter breakdowns, if you're chasing Laugh Tale, you're in the right crew. Yarg! Hit subscribe and let's set sail. Welcome back for episode 38 of the Void Century Podcast. Today we're trying something a little bit new this week. We're going to try mixing some of our theories and discussion into our chapter recap. We're here today to bring you chapter 1157 of One Piece, The Legendary Bar. So in the cover story again, we see Yamato, Okiku, and Ocho at a grave. We still don't know whose grave this is actually. All we know about this mysterious person is that they were born in the West and they moved to Wano. They died fighting Kaido, and the body is still missing. In typical Oda fashion, I would think this person's probably still alive, but who knows? Ed, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have no idea who's in the grave. I was thinking maybe it could have been, was Zoro's
Ryuma.
relative. Yeah, Ryuma, but we already know that did Zoro bring his body back? No, he just brought his sword back. So yeah, I'm really not sure who it could be. Maybe it's like a shrine to Ryuma, but yeah, that's like the only thought I have.
I think this grave is separate from Ryuma's. To my knowledge, we haven't seen Ryuma's grave yet.
Okay. So yeah, I'll just start with the chapter then. So we start with the Rocks Pirate raiding Bezel, which is an international charity sanctuary. And there's just a lot of loot. So I guess a bunch of people are donating items, clothing, money, for children or homeless people. And it's kind of like a charity island. So Choku guides everyone to book it with their loot and run back to the ship. The high priest of the temple is pleading that the money that they're stealing was donated for poor children in need. And Big Mom questions him, saying, if that's the case, why hasn't the money gone to the children yet? Which, honestly, that's kind of a good point.
Great point.
And then Ochoku gets a call from a crewmate asking him to lower a lift as they're still underground. And Shiki looks a little bit shocked, saying, oh no, he forgot about them. And I just tossed a bomb into this lower level where you guys are currently at and stuck in. And then we see Whitebeard, Kaido, and Silver Axe in the lower level, and they notice a bomb coming through a chute.
Shiki now looks a little bit menacing. I love the shtick, making it clear that he planned this on purpose, saying those who survive are going to get a bigger cut. And then that's an honestly interesting point about the loot. So this is a loot island. It's basically just waiting to get raided, right? It doesn't look like it's very protected. So literally it's a whole island of loot just out in the middle of nowhere and there's no protection. So how do you think it's not going to get raided? And Big Mom brings up a great point. Like, why would all the children actually need treasure and jewels? Like, what's the whole point of that, Ed?
Yeah, I just wanted to also bring up that we do hear later on that, like, they do have, like, the Marines coming to protect them. But like you said, like, why don't they actually have people protecting them in the first place? If they have this much money, we're in a pirate era. Well, I guess it's not the pirate era yet. So this is pre-Goldie Roger exclaiming it's the pirate era. So maybe there weren't as many raids at the time. Before the Rocks Pirates, we even had the Elbaf giants that were pirates raiding villages and stuff like that. But I guess that there wasn't that much pirate activity in general. So they didn't feel like they needed to protect it. So yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to bring up with that.
That is very interesting. I think that piracy has always been a problem as long as there have been people, there's been greed, and I mean, if you're putting treasure and jewels on an island, somebody's going to sail to it and try to take it for themselves, right? But
yeah,
if we want to discuss pirates a little bit, actually, Ed, did you know classically how pirate loot was distributed? Like, there was actually pirate loot shares back in the day. Typically, a captain who's the most important would get like 1.5 or 2 shares of the loot. Same with the first mate because, he was a quartermaster. He ordered everybody around and made sure that everything was functioning correctly. And then you have specialized officers like gunners, doctors. swordsmen perhaps, and they would get about like 1.25 to 1.5 shares of the loot. And then normal pirates would just get like a standard share, right? And did you know pirates also paid like sick pay too? Like if you lost an arm or a leg or something, there would specifically be funds set aside to make sure that you were compensated for your lost limb, and so you can get a nice hook affixed in the next port.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know that. So this is pretty cool lore. And I would imagine that in the One Piece world, maybe it's not the exact same percentages, but it would make sense that they would divvy up the loot based off of some sort of merit-based situation, similar to what pirates did in real life. So I really like that addition. But yeah, this kind of is concerning for the Rock's pirate crew, in my opinion, just because it gives them reason and desire to want to, have less crewmates. So they're going to be potentially hurting each other and setting traps for each other like Shiki just did. And yeah, it like on one hand, it's like it might thin out the weak and make your strong stronger, but on the other hand, it kind of prevents like cohesion between the group potentially. So maybe they just won't be as fluid battling together against the Marines as you'd want your crew to be, and you wouldn't get like the best out of your crew in this type of method. And also while you're fighting against, let's say, the Marines, like you might have a crewmate that potentially backstabs you as well. Like, we haven't had evidence of that yet with the Rocks crew, but it's just something where you just feel uneasy and as if you have to keep one eye over your shoulder at all times.
Well, we see well, not the progenitor, but the predecessor of the Rock's crew being Blackbeard, right? One of the main feats he's known for and how he really made a name for himself was killing Thatch on Whitebeard's crew. So it only makes sense, right? And given the fact that the Rock's crew is constantly attracting new members due to strength and Davy backfight shenanigans, that is one way for the crew to self-regulate. But to that point, as members are constantly coming in and out and you're fighting amongst yourselves, you're not going to be at full battle capacity very, very consistently, right? So that just goes to show that Rox himself had to be extremely powerful to keep all of these crazy powerful people in line. Rox had to be even more so powerful. So a mutiny is a thing in a pirate crew. So if you have these many strong personalities who are willing to kill each other, a mutiny is a definite possibility. So the captain had to be like extremely charismatic and even more so extremely strong to be able to lead this ragtag bunch of misfits, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And it just goes to show that, I mean, even with someone as powerful as Rox, there still just might not be that much cohesion and loyalty within the crew themselves. So like maybe they are loyal to Rox, but with each other, not so much.
I think we'll see that a bit later, but moving forward, we see the temple's high priest is a bit frantic, wanting to know when the Marines will get there. They really don't want to let the pirates escape now that they're trying to loot the island. He orders the guards to seal the temples. We see iron bars coming down, and then we see Big Mom. She gets ready to bust down the bars, blocking the exit when we see a massive earthquake. And we see in typical Whitebeard fashion that Whitebeard is actually using the Gura Gura no Mi to sink the island. Big Mom curses Whitebeard, and we see her and some of the guards and a bunch of other members falling down into rubble. Whitebeard, Kaido, and Silver Axe successfully escape, surviving Shiki's bomb in the underground chamber. And Kaido is kind of having a heart-to-heart with Whitebeard at this point. He's like, oh, I'm jealous. I can't do that. I wish I could sink an entire island. And Whitebeard's like, hey, devil fruit powers are really cool, but you have to be really careful. If you devote your whole life to finding a fruit, or if you find a fruit that's a bad one, then you're going to have to stick with it for the rest of your life. Shout out Terry Funk and the Jacket fruit. I don't know who ever wants to be an article of clothing for somebody else, but hey. And I think we should discuss a little bit about the devil fruits, actually. Whitebeard, perhaps this is where he actually produced the feat of sinking a whole island, because I believe they referred to Whitebeard back in the day as a man who could destroy an entire country, a man who could destroy the world, the strongest man in the world. right? But perhaps at this point, given that he's telling Kaido, hey, you got to be really careful what fruit you eat, perhaps he could also be referring to the drawbacks of a devil fruit, which is not being able to swim, angering the wrath of the sea, and sinking like an anchor. Perhaps Whitebeard really enjoyed swimming back in his youth. It's never really explored how he got his power, but perhaps, still waters run deep, and we see that Whitebeard is probably, I would say, the most empathetic of the rest of the Rocks crew. So I don't know, maybe he enjoys a nice bubble bath, kicking his feet up every now and then, and he feels like he can't do that at scale now that he has a devil fruit power. So, Ed, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, I think that in this scene, Whitebeard is really kind of giving Kaido like mentor vibes with Kaido, which kind of fits with Whitebeard's character. We see that in like the future, like after this era of Whitebeard, when he forms his own crew, he's very much like a father figure to his crew. They call him father. They're a family. They're brothers in the Whitebeard crew. So I think this might be kind of like the start of, or just like an early on Whitebeard trying to be like a fatherly mentor figure towards someone younger that might look up to him. So it's just kind of cool to see Whitebeard that way. So yeah, let's move on to the next scene. So Silver Axe, clearly upset, wants to know who ditched them down there, and that, with the bomb basically. Then he notices Shiki, and then he curses him for trying to kill them. And then Shiki starts playing dumb. He's got like an all innocent look on his face, and he says that he's happy that they survived and is worried, and he was worried about them.
I really love the gag. It's like, oh no, not me. I would never throw a little old bomb down on you. I'm so sorry. Was that me? Oops. I'm so silly. I love that gag. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, it's funny because like we clearly see a panel where he looks very proud of himself for bombing them, and then in the next panel we see him and he's just like all innocent looking. It's very funny.
Can I just say, I'm sorry, can I just say I'm really getting Buggy vibes out of Shiki right now. Buggy, or Shiki for Buggy's dad. Locked in.
I do see some similarities with Buggy for sure. All right, so Rock seems annoyed that there's a lack of cohesion of the group, and he asks if at least the treasure is safe. Like, all right, you guys can mess around and fight amongst yourselves here and there, but we gotta make sure our priority, the treasure, is still intact. And Shiki warns Rox that Marines are about to arrive at the shore, and Rox, instead of acting like surprised or upset, he's just amused at the challenge, and he tells his crew to stop with the infighting and get ready for a battle because there's Marines everywhere. Yeah, we see multiple ships. And Whitebeard says it was a bit fast for the Marines to react, so maybe someone leaked their plans. And my thought is that it could possibly be Silver Axe as the potential leaker. And the reason I think this is that, okay, it's really slim, but he's got an X on his chin, and so does X Drake. So like to me, like maybe that's a mark, like Oda's like little wink that this person might be an undercover Marine. What do you think about that?
I don't know. We still don't know too much about what it was. It Kyo the Hitman. We don't know too much about Silver Axe. He was just introduced to us. I do like his X motif, but X Drake also has an X, and here we can go to like the Charlie board, like pinning all these things together. But we just really don't know. It's going to be interesting in the future. I really want to explore the beef between him and Shiki and why they're rivals and why they even have that kind of conflict in the first place. But moving forward, Rock says they don't have time to prepare for sail, so he orders the crew to fight. I love that panel, by the way. And then the narrator comes up and starts basically listing off all the accomplishments the Rock's crew had during their run, right? So we are told that 16 documented raids took place, over 76 ships were sunk, 14 ports were reduced to ash, 5 towns wiped off the map, and 1 nation brought to ruin. and a partridge in a pear tree. Sorry, I had to. I couldn't contain myself. But we also hear that there were 3 unprecedented violations of Article 18 of international law. Everybody knows they took more fish than they were allowed. And then 25 criminal records quietly erased. So that is quite the list of accomplishments for this ragtag band of misfits. And I really wanted to discuss some of these feats, really, like, how would one bring a nation completely to its knees? And was this a nation affiliated with the world government? So what purpose? Perhaps when they were discussing that the Rocks crew brought a nation to its knees, perhaps that could be cover for God Valley, because we know God Valley was a nation. They had a king. It was wiped off the map. So,
Yeah,
do
I'm
you
not
think?
sure about that because this is we haven't gotten to the God Valley incident quite yet in this flashback. I know we visited it earlier in the series a little bit, but I think that these achievements are pre-God Valley incident. So it could be some other town, but I feel like these are pre-God Valley achievements.
That's a good point. I assumed that this was just the narrator telling us of all the exploits of the Rocks crew, like, completely, not in any chronological order.
Well, yeah, it was just in the 2 years of since their formation. These are
Ah,
all the things that happened. But yeah, I wanted to kind of bring up One Piece international law because that's something that they said it, and to me, like, I think that it's kind of BS, and really what it is the world government just wants to do whatever they want. They're kind of like the ultimate pirates, and they're not in it for the betterment of the world. And why I'm saying this is because it seems like they're just kind of hanging different countries joining as an affiliated nation as a carrot on a stick, as an excuse to do whatever they want towards non-affiliated nations. So, like, if you're not affiliated, the world government might just decide to seize your entire islands because you have some precious resource on your island or something like that. And if other affiliated nations have something against that, then, maybe they lose their affiliated status if they go against it. So that's just kind of one way they might use it to manipulate them.
to me, to be part of the world government also means paying tribute, right? You have to pay taxes to these people. But besides the protection from the world government and pirates, what do you really get from joining the world government is really what I'm having a hard time rationalizing right now. Because it's an extortion racket. You pay the world government so the world government doesn't attack you, right? And if you have a navy and you're unaffiliated, like, the world government can just come in and blow your guys up at any time and declare that you're in, international waters and in world government territory. So to me, it really seems like extortion for protection from the world government, right?
Yeah, and also just even in this chapter, like even if you had like like we saw the charity island getting attacked, like, so even if you have the blessings of the world government, it's not even 100% for sure saying you're going to have the protections of the Marines. Like, sure, they'll come and help you if it benefits them, and in this case, it benefits them because they want to capture the Rocks pirates. So yeah, the next thing was that they brought up that their criminal records were erased. So 25 criminal records were quietly erased, and I'm just guessing that it's all or most of the Rocks pirates. They're just like, hey, we don't want you guys to have anything on us anymore. So, like, maybe it's a way to, like, protect their, like, home islands, their home nations that they're from, or their families or something like that. They're just like, we don't want you to have any info on us. Let's just, like, make sure that it's deleted. And then, yeah, I think that that's kind of it for that.
So before we lose sight of anything, I just want to say that these panels that we see while the narrator is telling us the feats of the Rocks crew, these panels that we get to see, like Rocks himself versus like 6 Marine battleships and him just taking them out with his sword and the Conqueror's crackle, It's really like a chef's kiss. He's so powerful. I can't wait to see this animated and to actually watch him fight. But he
Absolutely.
he's probably the strongest character that we've been introduced to so far, unless you count like Emu, but we haven't seen anything about Emu or Shanks really, right? So this is just nuts. However, one of the things I wanted to talk about too is given that the world government is like relaying all these exploits and they're really in control, it seems, of the media. And I think the world government has been spreading a lot of propaganda for a lot of years, potentially forever. And I think it's possible that a lot of the racism and like xenophobia in the One Piece world has been perpetuated or at least seeded by the world government, right? Because even back as far as Arlong Park, we heard stories about humans who were like fearful of fishmen. I mean, Arlong went nuts. So they had a reason to be fearful of fishmen. But even before, I think it was Usopp or Sanji were recounting that fishmen are supposed to be like stronger than 6 men and they have pointy teeth. And there was just like a perpetuated like stereotype and fear around Fishman. But I mean, they had to learn that somewhere, right?
Yeah,
So
even in like real life, we see like propaganda like that about certain groups of people that, that's happened in the past. It's probably still happening today. So it kind of really hits close to home in real life for me, at least.
yeah, so it really is just the world government has just been spreading lies and they really control the information flow. They control the seas. They really are just, it's just like an all encompassing force in the world that is really controlling it and kind of suffocating it. So this is another notch, at least for us, in the idea that the ancient kingdom was probably a harmonious place where all of the races live together in harmony and they all work to build like a better world or a better civilization. But unfortunately, the world government had to come along and do their thing. But moving forward with the story, we get a cool panel of a battleship getting blown up by rocks. And the narrator goes on to state that even though Goldie Roger and the Roger Pirates were active during this time, this was the era of rocks. Like, there was no other. Rocks was the strongest. It was his era. And then we get a little jump cut and we get to see the island of Inishi in the New World. We see Marines are blocking Harold's ship from docking at a port. They asked Harold to leave at once because non-affiliated nations are considered lawless territories. And this kind of enrages Harold a little bit. The humans living there have no rights according to the world government. So we see here the world government is rolling on up on a random island to take their stuff because they're unaffiliated. So again, join the world government to protect you from the world government. And Harold's like, hey, you guys just can't decree that, right? These people helped us during our time of need. Like, who are you to roll on up and take this other island stuff just because they're unaffiliated? And we actually see here in these panels, Harold's starting to like look a bit older. Like the stress is starting to get to him. We're starting to understand why he looks so haggard in that portrait in the castle. And he basically demands that the Marines let the prisoners aboard their ships go. He declares these people to be his friends and his saviors because they really were there for Elbaf in their time of need during their famine. The Marines prisoners are pleading to Harold to save them, and we see Harold in like this really bad position, right? And the Marines basically say, Harold informs the Marines that they're not going to leave without paying their debt to the people of Inishi Island. The Marine leader counters that Elbaf is still under consideration for being a member nation of the world government. And if Harold was to intervene right now on behalf of the unaffiliated nation, he would be basically throwing Elbaf's application into the trash. So then in scummy fashion, we see this agent of the government looking like a CP affiliated greaseball. He tells Harold to clear the way and let these people get got. And Harold's saying that this person can't possibly be a human. And this person says, none of these people or excuse me, none of the prisoners are people to us. And then, Ed?
Yeah, so Harold attacks the Marines, and honestly, kind of justified. I feel like he made great arguments, and these are innocent people that they're holding hostage and shooting at. So yeah, do you think that maybe Harold might be starting to lose faith in the world government? Because, I mean, he just attacked a Marine ship.
I think he's really starting to see the idea of the world government versus the reality of the world government. And I think he doesn't like what he sees. I think he's tried to ignore it for a long time. However, the more he looks, the more he sees exactly how scummy the world government actually is and what control they have over the world. So I think really that's really gotten to him at this point, and I think it's gonna lead to all out war in some way.
Yeah, I mean, he did just witness a brutal slaying of an innocent prisoner, and they keep on dangling joining the world government as an affiliated nation over Harold's head. So, like, this is like, again, we talked about that carrot on a stick.
So we see this with Fishman Island today, and this could have just been a ploy to go ahead and lure them in, to lure the Fishman in so that they could take Shirahoshi and eliminate other members of the Fishman royalty, right?
Right.
So they're still doing this stuff today.
Yeah, good point. And honestly, I'm just wondering if there's gonna be a breaking point for Harold. Like, when is it too much? Like, what's gonna be his breaking point to say, hey, you know what? This carrot just isn't worth it anymore.
No, we don't. We don't know. And actually, we see that after this, news headlines are released shortly after, which declares that Harold attacked a world government ship, regardless of whether or not the world government was doing scummy actions. So we see, really, again, it's reinforced that the world government controls the information flow, much like they do today. So we know Big News Morgans is around, right? The albatross guy, and he controls the paper, right? Was he around in this era, or was it his predecessor? And how does the news control, or excuse me, how does the world government control the news,
I
right?
have a
We still don't,
question.
yeah, what's up?
Was Morgan's, is he really an agent of the world government? Because, like, I felt like he was writing stuff and publishing things that the world government didn't approve of as well.
Yes and no, but it could be like, okay, so if Morgans has the ability to control the news coup, which literally controls how the news is spread throughout the world, right? The world government, they can tame him in a way, but they can't completely own him, similar to Vegapunk, right? So
Got
maybe
it.
it's another situation where Morgans can have some of his own agency and rebel a bit, but overall they still like need him and depend on him in some way to control the masses
Okay, that
or
makes
to
sense.
get the information out. But we don't know if this was like Morgan's predecessor that just had the same fruit, right? We have that whole like theory that the world government keeps powerful fruits and just recycles them through people through the ages, right? But to that point, we know that Morgan's has his albatross fruit. It seems to be really strong if it does allow the creation and control of the news coups. That's not really explained. The news coups are the little birds that deliver the news, right? The little paper birds. And we've never actually seen Morgans in a human form, right? I actually had to double check to make sure that he had a fruit and he wasn't just a big bird and he wasn't just a mink. So we've never actually seen Morgans in his human form, but maybe we have. This could be one of the situations where we get a reveal of a character in their human form, only to find out that they've been penciled in the background of panels like Panda Man style for hundreds of chapters. We just don't know. So again, the headline was King Harold exposed. Elbaf, Elbaf monarch sinks innocent battleship. And the alliance with the government was revealed as a ploy the whole time. And it was just a mechanism of control. Really scummy stuff.
Right, it really is. Next, we cut to Ida's tavern on Elbaf, and you're just seeing King Harold and Xebec have a conversation over drinks. And Rox is just commiserating with Harold, saying that, that's just the world government for you. And Rox asks to continue their drinking at the castle, but Harold, he said that he'd never let a man with a reputation as bad as Rox come into the homeland. And Rox tells Harold that his entire nation should be joining with him, and he doesn't want to see Harold grovel to the government anymore. And Harold tells Rox that sooner or later Elbaf will become a member nation of the world government.
But again, as somebody who's already read the chapter to prepare this, we're going to see some things in the future that we're going to discuss. But right now, we know that the world government punished Harold for his failure. We don't know what his failure was yet, but again, perhaps the world government, it's in their best interest to have an ancient giant that's pure in blood to be the king of Elbaf. Again, I think ancient giants are flipped giants, if you will, that allow them to be controlled by the world government or EAM more easily. I think the horns have something to do with it. I think they definitely act as like a hockey receiver in some way. I just wanted to add in that little point.
I do kind of like the idea of them being like little hockey antennas that help them to be like mind controlled or whatever. Okay, so then next we see Rox poking fun at Harold shaving his head. So yeah, this we actually see him at the bar with a haircut, and it was like a pretty short buzz cut before this, and now it's just completely shaved off and bald. And yeah, and Rox says Garp laughed at him about the haircut as well, and Rox says that Garp would be better off as a pirate too. So Harold shaving his head makes him look kind of more angry and mad. And I mean, he's been beginning to look more and more angry, crazed, defeated a little bit even, but still very driven. And I think that this is kind of like marking him as straying from his dreams. What do you think, Adam?
I think it goes to show in the last episode that we had, shout out, we talked about potential for Luffy's mom, and we talked about the Kuja women specifically and how whether or not they age gracefully or terribly is dependent on whether or not they achieve their dreams of obtaining their love, right? I think we see it here. We see it with some of the SBSs that Oda worked on in the past. He likes to age up characters, and usually the ones who don't achieve their dreams or who have a hard time are the ones who don't tend to age the nicest, right?
Yeah, exactly. And with Harold, it seems like, it doesn't matter how driven he is, right? He is still driven to achieve his goal. And we're seeing that even though he has, a very strong motivation and he's doing everything right. Like he's not doing anything wrong, I think. Like he's doing it by the book. He's, trying to become like an affiliated nation. Like he's literally doing everything that by the book. He's not pirating anymore. Like he reformed from his old ways. And yeah, even with that desire, like, and motivation, like even with Gloriosa, I'm sure she was very motivated to pursue Roger. And it doesn't matter sometimes how motivated you are. Sometimes things just don't necessarily work out for you.
It's true. And moving forward, we see that Harold tells Rox that the world government's a massive organization. And while, some of the people in the ranks might be corrupt, the Marines are a great army, and the average Marines save people on a daily basis. And then we get a shout out, not the shout out yet. We see that some Marines already come from Elbaf, like we see John the Giant in the ranks of the Marines. If more giants join the Marines, they could use their strength to really make a difference for people everywhere, which is true. The giants would be able to altruistically help the world if they were part of the Marines. However, the Marines are controlled by the world government, right? So Rox says the thought of that is terrifying, and Rox tells Ida to talk some sense into Harold. Ida responds that if Harold was her son, maybe she'd tell him to choose his friends a little wisely. So she's insinuating Rox might be a bad influence on Harold. And then we see Loki and Hajrudin hiding behind the counter, listening to the conversation the whole time. So cute.
Yeah, little kids. So yeah, I think that this scene really kind of demonstrates how much charisma that Rox has. Like he is very charismatic. Like clearly Harold does not agree with what Rox is doing, yet he is still like regularly meeting up with Rox. And like I think that it's safe to say that they're friends, don't you?
100%. I think, again, with the Naruto shout out, like once ninjas touch fists, they understand each other completely, right? Like Harold and Rox, they clash swords. They understand each other as people, even though their motivations might be different. They really understand, like real recognize real, right?
Yeah, very, very, very true. But yeah, so like I'm at the point where like right now reading this flashback, I'm just kind of rooting for Rox. Like I am kind of team Rox. Like, yeah, screw the world government. They suck. They're awful. He's right. Like if Harold joins Rox, like they could totally topple and defeat Emu and, you know, make the world a better place. Like I totally believe that. And like, sure, he's looting some innocent charity islands. So like, yeah, like he's, you know, definitely like an anti-hero. Like, but if it wasn't for Goldie Roger fighting against Rox at God Valley, like I would assume that he was a good guy. What do you think?
So I just wanted to make an interesting point when we were recounting the exploits of the treasure island, right? So the charity island, it said the money was being collected for children in need. It never said the money was being used for children in need.
Sure, sure. That's just getting into semantics. I do think that like it probably was going to be used for children. I think that it just takes time to figure out who and how, who gets like who it goes to and how does it get there. So like that's kind of the reasons why like maybe they had some leftover money and loot for them
I'm
available.
just saying the children in need were children of celestial dragons and not orphans. That's all I'm saying.
I guess it's possible. I'm not gonna rule that out, but I like just by the way that the high priest was acting and behaving, it does seem like at least he believed it was an altruistic situation. So yeah, right now I want to believe that it was for charity and Rox is a horrible person. Even
I
though, you know, we're talking about his good charisma and how like I like him as a character.
I think he's a great character. However, we know that Goldie Roger, Garp are going to face off against Rox and ultimately kill him. So perhaps this is going to lead us to look at Garp and Roger a little bit differently once we understand what went down at God Valley.
Yeah.
And if we want to speak about God Valley a little bit, like we see that Whitebeard's not completely on board with everything the Rox crew does and says. It seems like Whitebeard is almost like a fish out of water, right? Like he's strong, so he's there, and he follows Rox because of the Davy back fight. However, we don't know. It seems like Whitebeard's motivations is completely different from the crew, right? Do you think this led him to switch sides during God Valley at like a pivotal moment?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's a very strong chance that Whitebeard switched sides. But I want to circle back a little bit to, you know, like you said that Whitebeard kind of sticks out in the crew. And I think that he's not the only one who does. I think that Gloriosa is another one that kind of sticks out for me because she just does not seem like Rock's pirate vibe either. So there are some like exceptions here and there. There might be another one like potentially Silver Axe, but he is kind of like really big, buff, and scary looking. So it might maybe not Silver Axe, but like you know, there are certain people who I can potentially see flipping sides during the God Valley incident, and yeah, Whitebeard is one of them.
I think so. I also am Team Gloriosa too pretty for the Rocks crew, to be honest with you. I mean, Stussy okay, but she's not an empress. She's not an Amazonian empress. Come on now.
Fair.
So we see, going back to Whitebeard, we see Whitebeard actually use his Gura no Mi powers to actually level this treasure island, right? So perhaps if God Valley was really eliminated from the map and really sunk into the sea in some way, perhaps it was Whitebeard using his powers to eliminate God Valley, and maybe that's how he really got his epithet. You know, treasure islands are one thing, but you know, sinking an entire island with a mountain on top of it under the sea, like that's another feat in itself, right?
Absolutely. And I think that regardless of whether or not Whitebeard, flips sides during God Valley, I think it's a good prediction that he might be the one that sank the island, and that's why we don't see it anymore in the present day. But I would like to move forward and kind of pose this question of, does Blackbeard also have a similar level of charisma to his father? Because just like Rocks, he was able to form his own very powerful crew. Like the Blackbeard pirates are definitely up there in terms of one of the strongest crews. He is a Yonko. I would say he is a huge threat with his crew. And honestly, I do kind of wonder about their cohesion as well, because it does seem like Blackbeard is following in his father's footsteps in a lot of regards, actually. And yeah, I just see a lot of similarities, and maybe Oda doesn't really show too much of Blackbeard because maybe it would make the audience like him too much. Because I'm loving Rocks right now. I don't know how you're feeling.
I I do love Rocks. I just want to address Blackbeard is so similar to Rocks, and again, there's multiple things. We know bloodlines are very important. So my thing is, does Blackbeard have this motivation because he's the son of Rocks? We also have that weird thing where he doesn't sleep. Before I met Rocks, I thought he was a cowardly kind of person that would pour himself into a child or a baby in some way to save his own skin. However, Rocks seems a little bit too cool for that now. I'm actually really digging Rocks and I really like him. However, we know Blackbeard still has that weird dual personality thing going on. So is it still possible for Rocks to influence in some way further than just being his father, right? Because as far as we know, Blackbeard didn't really have a lot of time with his dad to learn from him. So the fact that he's so similar and he has a lot of very similar feats, there's got to be something more to it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I really agree. I think that the dual soul theory, it just seems more and more realistic. Okay, so back to the chapter, we move over to the Marine headquarters, and Admiral Kong is actually having a conversation with a bunch of vice admirals, including Otsuru, Sengoku, and Garp. So just kind of reminding you guys, so Suru, we've seen her in the present, and this is kind of what they become. So she's like an old lady. She's got the Washu Washu no Mi, which allows her to wash and hang people out to dry, like objects, like laundry. And she's a future great staff officer, so she's high up in the Marines in the present day. And then Sengoku, future fleet admiral, he's got the Buddha devil fruit. He did the Buddha bomb at, what was it called? Marine Ford Arc. And then Garp is the hero of the Marines, Luffy's grandfather. He was hero for his efforts at God Valley, member and possible founder of Swords. He's actually the only one who stayed vice admiral out of these three, and he mentored Kobe and is currently captured by Blackbeard. So yeah,
Correction, I think Suru is also still a vice admiral as well. Sengoku definitely became fleet admiral, but Garp's also been offered the position of admiral, but he keeps turning it down. He doesn't want more ownership in the Marines for some reason. I couldn't imagine why.
if Suru is a vice admiral, it doesn't say that on the wiki. It says that she's currently great staff officer. So maybe we need to edit.
Oof, I don't know. I'm sorry. I just never remember her becoming a full admiral proper. So we see Kong is actually reading off some concerns about the giant. Again, this is more giant propaganda. It's like, if a giant were to roll over in their sleep, people could be crushed. If one giant loses their temper, their lives could be in danger. Can humans really coexist with such creatures? And we see Garp in typical Garp fashion. He's chewing down on some crackers. And he's really shocked to hear this stuff. Garp's like, oh, okay, so these people are so dangerous. They're just okay with joining the Marines and turning them into weapons, right? And then Sengoku comments that Harold is an honest man trying to learn from history and change Elbaf, right?
Yeah, and then Otsuru says that there are rumors that Harold is being scouted by Rocks himself, and if that's true, the Marines might not be able to stand against them. And Kong agrees that everyone is making good points. but they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I don't know if that was a pun intentional or not, but good one, Kong. Kong relents that the Giants have a wild and violent track record, and Garp explains that that's exactly the kind of strength that he's after for the Marines. And he demands to hurry and make Elbaf a member nation. And to him, it's just a non-issue.
Again, we see the world government manipulating the Giants. They manipulate multiple countries with the promise of joining the world government for acceptance and protection from the world government. They did the same thing similarly at Egghead when they promised to make York a celestial dragon as long as she sold out Vegapunk. And again, I think it's the same tactic they're currently trying to use on the Fishman at Reverie. And I don't know if it's because the world government knows the prophecy and knows that they need giants in the final battle, or because they know that the giants are so strong they can't even 1v1 Elbaf, right? Even with all their power, they can't 1v1 the giants because they'll lose. So, for some reason, the world government seems hell-bent on not allowing Harold to have some kind of relationship with rocks. I think that's really what's ticking the world government off right now, because Harold has this crazy racial ability that they talked about a couple chapters ago, where Harold has the ability to control giants. Apparently, when the Galilei band was mentioned, it was stated that they would need Harold to control the Galilei band. For what reason, we don't know. Perhaps this could be an implication with the ancient devil fruit that was also mentioned to be on Elbaf. We just don't know. I don't know if this power could have similar implications to something like an ancient weapon. We know Shirahoshi is the mermaid princess. She's Neptune. She's considered an ancient weapon, but she's born that way. We don't know if there could be an ancient weapon related to a devil fruit, or if it's just something as standard as being a warship or being a physical object in some way. So now we get another cut. We cut over to Hachinosu 42 years ago, and we see news arrive to the island via news coup. Could be a subtle hint to our friend Morgan's that Shaki has quit as captain of the Kuja Pirates. And we see there are people on the island just losing their minds. The rank and file are just losing it. Their hearts are broken, and they're just upset that there's never a chance for them to run into the beautiful Shaki at sea anymore. And some of them say that they started the whole pirate journey so that they would get looted and plundered by the Kuja pirates, and now their dreams are dashed and their heart broken. And we see Gloriosa reading the newspaper, and she wonders what Shaki's up to. She relents and really hopes that Shaki didn't leave the pirates to chase after a man, much like she did, because she would ruin her life, and then relents and hopes that she's not chasing after Roger, because then she would be competition. And then we actually get a snide remark from Big Mom, and actually asks her if Big Mom asks Gloriosa if she thinks Shaki left because she's chasing after a man like Gloriosa is, and asks if love always leads to ruin on the Isle of Women. And Gloriosa jabs back at Big Mom and basically tells her that she wouldn't know anything about love because she has so many children with so many different men. So she would know anything about love. And I just want to point out in this panel, it's kind of hard to see, but it's so cute. But we actually get to see a little Daifuku oven and katakuri. And I just want to lead it in, Ed. Who do you think is the father, Ed? Who do you think's the father of these three young men?
Yeah, the babies look really, really cute, especially Katakuri. He's just so cute to me. But yeah, so me and Adam kind of got really deep into this somehow. I don't know how, but we were just kind of going over hey, there's actually blood types listed for these characters. So we find out that Daifuku, and these are fake blood types, and in Japanese culture, they kind of use blood types as a personality trait type, horoscope type of thing. So Daifuku is an X blood type, Oven is an F blood type, and Katakuri is an XF blood type. So this means that most likely their father and their parents have X and F blood types. So we actually know that Big Mom has X blood type. So that means that the father probably has an F blood type. Now, we actually have the blood types of a couple other Rocks pirate men, and one of them is Kaido, who has an F blood type, and Whitebeard, who also has an F blood type. So, is it possible that either Kaido or Whitebeard is the father of the trio, the deadly trio of Big Mom? What do you think, Adam?
And I'm going to say hold up real quick, all right? Because in this panel, we see that the three triplets, they look to be about, like, they could be 3 to 5. I don't know. But all I'm saying is Kaido's, like, in his 20s. So if Big Mom was seducing Kaido enough to produce these children, Kaido was, like, in his teens, man. That's not cool. Big Mom, she's a cougar for sure. Big cougar.
Well, if that's
Huge
true,
cougar.
if it's true that it's Kaido as the father, then yeah, it's kind of wrong. I agree.
If you think about it, though, Katakuri, right? He's got the monster vibes, and Kaido himself is an ogre, been referred to as a monster multiple times, as a beast. So who knows? I hope Big Mom wasn't referring to Kaido personally as a beast. If you catch my drift.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so Gloriosa starts kind of like pondering to herself mostly, saying that she can't really imagine Shaki getting lovesick, and she would be really, really jealous if he went after Roger, or sorry, if she went after Roger.
And we see Miss Buckingham Stussy, actually. She's like, oh, Shacky this, Shacky that. Everybody's so tired about hearing about Shacky all the time, but you don't have any eyes for anybody else like Shacky other than me, do you, Newgate? And we see her, she tries to get like all up on Whitebeard, who's kind of like pondering life in the reflection of his Naginata right now. And he's just kind of looking at himself. And Whitebeard's just like, listen, I don't like you. I've never liked you. Please get away from me. And we see Stussy's like, but it's me. It's the wonderful Miss Bakken, the woman you've been looking for your whole life. And she's like, I could have anybody in the world, but I want to be yours. And Whitebeard's just not having any of it. He's pushing her off. And then, she just gets upset. It's like the why won't you love me kind of thing. And this is the perfect segue into Edward Weevil, the Shichibukai, Whitebeard light, like not even. So it seems here that Whitebeard isn't really too much of a fan about Bakken. And the thing we know about Bakken is she was a member of MADS. She was part of that crazy science group that included Judge and Queen and Caesar Clown. So they know cloning technology. They know gene manipulation. I think Bakken probably plucked a hair out of his mustache while he was sleeping and decided to make her own Whitebeard upon the death of Whitebeard. I think the sample was tainted, though. She's supposed to be some crazy scientist. I think that maybe she got, some kind of dirt in the sample, or maybe she got like a smudge on her glasses while she was doing the gene manipulation. Something didn't work out too well, because Weevil is nothing like Whitebeard. Guruguru me, or Guruguru no me or not, right?
Yeah, I think that maybe it could also just be he was like one of the earlier test cases, because he does look older than like Sanji and probably even Stussy on CP0. So it could have just been like an early test, or maybe she left like the scientist group and like she kind of like stole part of like the schematics for gene, cloning and stuff like that, and she just didn't have the full picture and kind of did something on her own, and she just wasn't as talented to come up with a proper clone like the others were able to do. Okay, so moving back to the chapter, we next see that the Kuja pirates ship arrive in Hachinosu, which is pretty exciting news. Big news. Shakuyaku arrives on the island in a historic moment, causing a commotion on Hachinosu. All the pirates start worshipping her like a goddess, and they ask her if she's going to join the Rocks crew like Gloriosa. And Shaki says that she doesn't want to join the crew, but she wants to live there for a while.
So could this be a subtle nod to Shaki eventually joining the Rocks Pirates as well? We know she's a bartender. She is the proprietor of Shaki's ripoff bar, and we know drinks are literally served on the rocks, okay? we don't know. Maybe she could have lost the Davy back fight to Rox. I mean, at that point, if Rox really wants you on his crew, you're gonna be on his crew, right? That's just how he goes.
Yeah, and
Like,
just going on that tangent, did Gloriosa also join via Davy backfight, or did she just kind of like willingly go and join the Rock's pirate crew? Like, how did that go on? Because like Gloriosa is chasing after Roger. Why is she on Rox's pirate crew?
yeah, that's a great point. But we don't know. It seems like the Kuja women, they really have the whole love thing going on, which I don't know if that's a power that's passed down via devil fruit. I assume it is, but it seems like a lot of the Kuja women, if the power is not recycled itself, they have a lot of similar properties where men will just like fawn over them and do whatever they want, right? So I think Rox is also susceptible to these powers, love fruit or not, especially when it comes to somebody like Shaki. So I don't think he's too likely to forcibly make them join the crew, right? Rox ain't that kind of guy. He might be a scoundrel and a scammer, but he's not a creep.
No, I mean maybe I don't know actually. Um, and yeah, I do think that it's kind of like just I think it's natural property of the Kuja empresses because like they all seem to like have that type of like even Gloriosa. So I think that's just kind of like a property of the Kuja one, like at least the empresses in general.
Do you think this is a specialized advanced conquerors hockey that makes people love you?
No, I just think that they're very beautiful.
I think so too, but in the One Piece world, you never know. They can always
That's true.
retcon some of this
And like
stuff in.
the other reason why I don't think it's like a fruit is because like they're still alive. Like Shaki's still alive, and so is Boa Hancock. So it's not like she got her fruit from Shaki, you know?
Ah, that's true. Maybe the stone thing is only part of the love powers.
Yeah,
Maybe the
exactly.
insane attraction is just the Kuja Empress thing. Good point.
Yeah. So we see that Shaki talks about quitting the Kuja pirates, and it won't, even though she quits, it won't stop the Marines from coming after her, because we did see that she has a wanted poster earlier. And Shaki asks the Pirates of Hachinosu to protect her, and they like immediately agree, say like whatever you want. And then Shaki says, "The island stinks," and the pirates are like, "Well, we'll clean the island up right away. Like we're gonna like, yes, it absolutely stinks. It's not gonna stink anymore." And then Shaki's like, "Well, I want to open up a store," and the pirates are like, "Okay, we're gonna build you one like immediately." And you know what? We're also gonna start like growing flowers because like it's pretty, it smells nice. And Rox comes down from like his perch and he's like, what is going on? Like, why is everyone like, what's the fuss?" And he's shocked to see that Shaki's ripoff bar opened on the island. And the wait to get into this bar would take over a month to get in. So it's very, very popular on Hachinosu. And of course, Rox just walks in because he's Rox. And he's like, and Shaki sees him and welcomes him to, and his crew to her bar. And the Rox crew, including Rox, call her an angel and are immediately smitten with her. And, you know, they got the hard eye stuff going on. And Shakuyaku, it was said, was like a flower blooming in a dry wasteland, and her very presence enriched the island.
The narrator states that everyone on Hachinosu came to covet her as an irreplaceable jewel, the treasure of the island. Unfortunately, treasures are usually the target of theft. So perhaps this is a nod that Shaki herself was the treasure of Hachinosu the whole time. And perhaps we know that the world government knows of Hachinosu. It's been stated to be a pirate paradise. Perhaps the world government repays the Rox crew by looting Hachinosu. They would have to lure the crew out somehow. However, Shaki could have been brought to God Valley as a prize. We know that the world government seems to fancy Amazonians, especially as slaves. We see this unfortunately with Boa and her sisters, but perhaps they weren't the first, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So maybe continue.
so was Shaki actually kidnapped by the world government? And if she was, maybe the spy on the Rox crew is the one that kidnaps them or kidnaps Shaki. So if my theory from earlier is true, then maybe it could be Silver Axe Do you have any other potential people it might be, or someone else who might be a spy for the world government, Adam?
Yeah, it was kind of rolled over a little bit in the previous chapter, but I thought it was interesting that Streusen is also part of the Rocks crew, like proper. Also an accessory of Big Mom, but like he's a member of the Rocks crew proper. We don't know much about Streusen. We know he's like a really weird guy. He's pretty old. He was a pirate before he joined the Big Mom Pirates. Well, founded them really. But he actually was there at the Lamb House and saw Big Mom's birthday party. He saw what Big Mom did, found it absolutely hilarious. Guy has a screw loose. He was age 29 when they met, and Big Mom she was a literal child,
Wait, do you
right?
think that maybe Streusen was the one who brought Big Mom to the Rocks Pirates? Because, like you said, they were connected, like, since she was a little kid.
It's possible. It's also possible Streusen knew who Mother Caramel was, and Mother Caramel, albeit involved in the underworld, was still an agent of the world government in some way, like actively worked with the world government to obtain giants.
Sure.
So Streusen, definite possible spy for me, and he continues to be a pirate to this day, but we haven't heard of him since really these past chapters, but before that we haven't heard about him since Whole Cake Island.
So yeah, maybe Shaki is actually that like final prize that they were fighting for at God Valley, that the Celestial Dragons were fighting for at God Valley. And it would kind of explain also the Rocks Pirates and Rogers Pirates going there to try to save her, because they're both invested in the safety of Shaku Yaku. So it would kind of be very reminiscent of Helen of Troy from the Iliad. If you guys are familiar with that story, basically a woman gets kidnapped and multiple nations are fighting over who gets to keep her. So yeah, Rox then exclaims that Shaki's bar smells really good, which those pirates, man, they know how to clean up, I guess, if they set their mind to it. And we next cut to the room of authority in Mary Joie. Take it, Adam.
We see St. Marcus Mars letting everybody know that they will finally accept Elbaf's admission into the world government under one condition: Harold kills Rox.
Dun dun dun.
So, dun dun dun, I think this is the final straw, really, that's finally going to break Harold and turn him against the world government. Like we stated previously in this episode, like, real recognize real. They might not have the same ideas, but they're still friends, right? They still respect each other for their strength. And, even though they go about it by different means, they want to affect good change in the world. And at this point, it seems the world government has become an enemy for both of them, right? Even though they're trying to affect change in different ways.
Wait, so do you think that Harold was at God Valley?
Actually, I think it is a huge possibility. Do you think that's where Rox ultimately dies? Do you think Harold has something to do with it? We know the world government says that Harold failed. Do you think if Harold goes to God Valley, he could become a prize as well? Do you think they could enslave Harold?
They would absolutely try to enslave Harold. I agree. But also, I'm just thinking, like, maybe it was Harold that slays Rox and not Garp and Goldie Roger. Like, I think that that's also if Harold is there, again, that's a big if. But if Harold is there, he's definitely strong enough to take on Rox. Like, he's one of the very few people. So it could be him that ultimately stops Rox.
They say Harold failed, right? Ooh.
Harold failing could just be failing to join the world government, it doesn't, that's like, failed can mean different things depending on the context. So we don't really know in what way he failed. Like, maybe he failed in trying to join as an affiliated nation and he didn't,
All right, I'm really going to tinfoil hat here. So if Harold is at God Valley, right, we know that there's a huge possibility that Emu is also on God Valley. And if ancient giants really can be controlled better because of their horns, perhaps Emu pitted Harold against Rox, and Rox is the reason why Harold lost his horns.
I like that. Yeah, so maybe that's why. Well, no, we know that Harold ends up pulling off his horns
Did he
himself,
tear
right?
his horns out?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
he teared out his own horn. So maybe Emu controlled Harold to stop Rocks. And then after the events, Harold was, disgusted with himself. And that's when he ripped off his horns because he realized how Emu did it.
Ah, that makes a lot of sense.
I like that idea, actually. I mean, that was your idea. I just added on to it, but I think that that's a fun idea too. Because again, Rocks and Harold are friends. So it wouldn't make sense for Rocks to want to fight Harold necessarily. And maybe it was kind of Rocks and Goldie Roger and Garp fighting against King Harold, who was controlled by Emu. Like, that could have been a possibility.
Oh, that makes sense because maybe that's why Garp doesn't want to accept any kind of adoration for his feats at God Valley. Maybe because he really wasn't the one that stopped Rocks the whole time.
Yeah, maybe it was
he just
Rocks that stopped and saved the rest of them, potentially, Like, ultimately, Rocks could still be potentially a good guy. Like, we don't know yet. Like, I'm leaning towards him being a bad guy, but, judging by what happens on God Valley will really explain, a lot more about Rocks.
So I think Rocks could also be, again, he's really chaotic, right? We know Blackbeard himself is like really chaotic and like really evil when it comes to like trying to satisfy his own ambitions. However, I think a lot of this could be world government propaganda. Maybe all those feats, right, that we read about earlier, maybe they were against like world government affiliated like islands, right, really to hurt like the world government, right? Kind of like we're seeing today with the revolutionaries. And maybe even though Rocks did burn down like all these places and like kill all these people and blow up all these ships, maybe these were like world government resources. So he was really like fighting the greater power the whole time. But the fact that he was not the victor allowed this propaganda just to be perpetuated against him. And like us as readers, we've heard this whole time that Rocks is really this bad guy. But really, when you come to find out what actually happened, you realize that Rocks wasn't really like this terrible person. He had plenty of redeeming qualities.
Right. And like, we know that the world government is really controlling how history is being written. Like the Void Century exists because they wanted to erase history. So they're very controlling of, like what is kind of like the historical record. So if Rox ends up not being like the villain that we all assumed he would be, then it would make sense. Now, I do think that most likely he was a villain just because Blackbeard exists, and Blackbeard is clearly a villain in my mind. So I think that Rox is probably the villain, but I do like that there's some wiggle room here. Like, even though we're so close to God Valley about to happen in this flashback, like there's still wiggle room. Like, he might still end up actually being like a good person. So like, it's really fun to ride this journey along with you.
Yeah, thanks. It's really fun to be able to speculate with you. However, I think there's a multitude of things that could happen with this final ultimatum from the world government. Like Harold and Rox are friends, right? So Harold might have tipped off Rox, and maybe the world government blames the failure on Harold because Rox got away, or maybe he could kind of prepare himself a little bit for God Valley and the things that were to come. However, Harold could ultimately be responsible for God Valley, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe he knew Rox was on the island, went there, tried to settle things, got mind controlled, forced friends to fight against each other, and in doing so, Roger and Garp and the Gods Knights got involved, and then it just became like Marineford all over again, right? Just all out war, chaos, and bedlam everywhere. So I think that the world government, regardless of whether or not Harold succeeded or failed, they would have eliminated him in the first place. To have the context come out that Rox was eliminated by some shenanigans in a hit or assassination plot from the world government. I mean, the world government wouldn't want people to know how shady they actually are if they could help it. So it only makes sense that they would try to eliminate Harold either way just to keep it a secret. And I mean, we know Harold has finally reached a breaking point, right? We know that Harold's looking old and haggard. He's trying to do whatever he can to fulfill his dreams. But maybe this is like that Joker moment where he finally like snaps, right? And this actually pushes him towards the Rocks crew. Like he takes the black pill. He just doesn't care anymore. And he just wants to go all out against the world government. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that this is probably going to be Harold's breaking point, asking him to kill his friend. So yeah, I'm on board with that.
So this was episode 38, chapter 1157, The Legendary Bar of One Piece, and thank you all again for sailing with us. That's it for this voyage of the Void Century Podcast. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you sail for One Piece content. Catch our bite-sized theories and lore on TikTok and Instagram Reels. Until next time, whether you're seeking the poneglyphs or unraveling the history behind the Will of the D, listen to the voice of all things and we'll see you on our next voyage.